Right, so this one is in danger of becoming a very long, rambly one, but it's about what I've got in common with Brexiteers and what I agree with them on and where I think we can find common ground. And the reason why I want to do this is I'm just pretty sick of all the arguing at the moment, back and forth across a divide, especially with the Trump election now. I'm already seeing all over social media, the angry, shouty videos, all the violence and real stupidities on both sides, which I don't see calming down, and that's not going to be a solution to everyone when we've all got so much in common and so much we need to build together. So within all of this, I mean, you see a lot of people trying to change other people's minds. For example, the campaign Change Britain, which came out of the Leaving side, said, now that we voted for Brexit, we all need to get together and have a common vision. Yeah, great, but it's all Brexiteers and their team, and their position is we all need to get behind a hard Brexit because we all said we're coming out of the single market. So this idea of we all need to come together and agree with me isn't going to wash. And similarly, on our side, the Remain side, this notion that we need to educate people about why they were wrong and change their mind now doesn't appeal to me. I'd rather change my own mind. It's far more fun and inspirational to take a sidestep and look at things differently than it is to continue battling for other people's souls against their wills. I'm not into that proselytizing. And I know that there have been comments on my video saying, condescending and, you think you're better than us and all this kind of stuff. No, just been trying to get ideas out, get ideas clarified, but people will take that as being against them unless you've got some degree of clarification. So here we go. What can we agree on? Well, I mean, first of all, with the whole referendum campaign, I do think that the Remain side deserved to lose. I think it was a very cynical campaign. It was all about fear-mongering. It was extremely frustrating for those of us that were trying to deal with this campaign to try and say, look, there's tons of positives as well. What about all of these societies that have got a lot to say about the EU from their long-standing experience, whether it be scientists like us or in health or farming or tech communities, small businesses, environmentalists, the lot. But they wouldn't have it. And they were determined to push everyone over the line on this cynical threatening about the economy, even in the short term. And for me, the short term doesn't matter. If you have a short-term economic shock, if you're taking a country to a better place ultimately, I just didn't think that we were. For me, I was very resentful of how the whole referendum campaign went. There were people who said, or will continue to say, that Cameron calling a referendum was a mistake, you shouldn't rely on referendums, yada yada yada. I disagree. I think it was good that a referendum was called. I think it needed to be called at the time that it was called. 8% of the population understood how the EU works. You can't go on like that. And if you do believe in democracy, you do have to trust in the people and their decisions. And you have to go down that path, because otherwise you leave people behind and you don't include them, and it gets more cynical. I just think the way the campaign was run was utterly wrong. I was in a politician's office when I found out that it was only going to be about 4 months of running, and I said, what the hell is this? People don't understand how the EU works. That doesn't give enough time for a fair debate on both sides, to educate people at a very critical time so that they can make a fair decision once they actually know what's going on. But I was told, no, the thinking is that you don't want, it all to be skewed by migrant crisis over the summer, and also the Leave campaign seen in a bit of disarray at the moment. Therefore, it's going to be, sharp and quick and all this kind of stuff. And I just thought that was utterly the wrong philosophy. So I thought, and also I was at one of the campaign rallies. Well, I was at two where David Cameron was speaking. One about, the World War stuff, even though he didn't say that explicitly. The other one where he said a vote to leave would be like putting a bomb under the economy and lighting the fuse ourselves. And I just thought, oh, you twat! People aren't going to respond to that, and that's cynical anyway. That's not about any of the key issues of what we've built together. I mean, I used to be critical of the EU. My whole work in science on issues of science policy started with criticisms of the EU, with misspent money, with poor recording of data about the projects they were funding, about poor distribution of money between East and West, and all the brain drain and fallout that causes. I was very critical in lots of articles, but and the bureaucracy, but that all got better recently. So I can understand why people rail at the bureaucracy, because I was too. But in terms of science, in recent years, the EU has really come good on that front. So when Rob and I started Scientists for EU, it was on the basis of that, and I didn't know how the rest of the science community would feel, but we got thousands of followers just over that first weekend on Facebook and Twitter, and it showed that lots of scientists around the UK had similar thoughts and similar experiences from the EU, but just hadn't had that expressed yet. So it's complex territory, but I also think that because of all this arrogance and top-downness and Westminster bubbleness, that the system did need a shock. Cameron was a twat. Juncker still is a twat. There are some lovely MEPs in there, but the system obviously needs a bit of a shake-up because people are disconnected from it. So Brexit is, to a degree, good like that. And it gets some cohesion going now in the EU and gets them thinking about it, but it also gives us this extended period now to actually understand better what has been built up over the last 40 years, all of those useful strands, and whether we want them. We didn't have that conversation properly before, but now we're dealing with the actual realities of that. So now we're actually getting the proper education that we never had, and getting into all that nitty-gritty, which is important. And similarly in the States, like with the UK and the EU in the States, something had to give. It couldn't go on like that. There were tensions building and something had to give. Now, in the US, they have a massive problem with their democracy. They've left the bottom half, or the bottom whatever proportion of their population, just to drop off and invested at the top. Of course that's going to come back to bite you. And in terms of democracy, there was a study done by Harvard University, I think it was, that showed that the correlation between laws made and what the people want is zero. Between laws made and the bottom 90% of the people. But for the top 10%, there is some correlation. So that just goes to show you that the system was bust, and everyone knew the system to be bust. So who should be the one to fix it? Well, Bernie Sanders was the right candidate for that. He had, all the credibility, all the history, but the corrupt Democrat Party repressed him and pushed in Hillary Clinton, at the top levels. So that's corrupt elitism, and that deserves to be punished, and by God it's been punished now because Trump's come through, and he came through on similar messages to Bernie Sanders, but he doesn't have the right background or temperament to put it in. He's been thoroughly corrupt himself, more so than Hillary Clinton. If you look at his long business career of ripping people off and personal favoritisms and insulting others, he is not the right character type to do it. And he got it over the line, much like Brexit was got over the line, by also appealing to the lowest aspects of human nature and all of that divisiveness. And that's what has made a few important elements also a completely toxic bundle. So I can understand those people that voted for Trump over Hillary, because you had to pick between two evils. You had to either break the system, but you open Pandora's box socially on it and take a massive risk with Trump, or you reject all of that danger and keep with the closed box and the elitist system and hope that you'll be able to change it, but you haven't sent them a strong message. So what do you do? And a lot of people stayed at home. I mean, half the electorate, the adult electorate that could vote, didn't. So it's a bit of a horrible situation in the States, and let's hope that that can be healed. And the way to heal it is to find what we can build in common. And during the referendum debate, and I've said this before, we had various debates with scientists for Britain who started up in reaction to us, and it was a bit testy at the beginning, but we found common ground. And so in various of the debates that we had, and I got on well with these guys, as I've said before, the issue is that we all want the same for science. We all want it to be international, to be global, to have movement of talent around and lowered barriers to innovation rather than bureaucracy. We all want that. And the only debate was about whether the EU and our membership of the EU was a help to that or a hindrance to that. And a handful thought it was a hindrance, and most of us thought it was a help. But fair enough, we're all within the same community debating that issue. And I think, and I wanted, and I was proud of that, because I thought that, you know, that was a mature approach. And I think, well, I know for sure that we're going to need approaches like this for the country now, because we're in a very interesting position, you know, now in the middle, torn between, you know, Trump and the EU and everything on the table. And so now is the right time, because we have months now to actually have the national conversation with open hearts, with open minds, with love for all of our communities. This country shouldn't be some kind of top-down hierarchy about people and elites. It is multi-dimensional. You've got your doctors and your nurses and your farmers and your fishers. What's the hierarchy to all of that? There isn't. It's multi-dimensional. We are all a community together. We all need each other, and we all need to make sure that no one feels left behind and no one is over empowered. We all have that opportunity. So what are the common fundamentals from which we can build for that? I think an important one at the moment is the NHS. Most people feel a lot of support for the NHS. It is something that represents our country uniquely. I know there are some for Brexit who think that its NHS is bloated and it should be privatized, but I think most people want it to be everything that it should be. And so I do think we need that investment. I mean, that's what Vote Leave promised, and there was a lot of people that voted for that, and that's what a lot of the Remain camp support as well. So that's an area that we can agree on. The NHS needs investment, and it needs investment now, because it's quite urgent. And we also need investment in our communities. For me, the best way to get investment into those communities for the longer run is through better pairings, closer pairings between our universities and our local communities. Our universities are ideal for spinning out the small companies of the future, which grow fast and then bring in jobs of all sorts as they grow. But universities are also ideal for being a supportive nest for those small businesses that are starting themselves in tech and innovation, big data, cutting edge stuff. And that's how we can start to get some manufacturing, precision engineering stuff, as well as tech, into all of the regions of our country, so that wherever you're brought up, you have opportunity there. And I think that we also need to more overtly show respect for each other. And certainly on the Scientists for EU Facebook page, sometimes it does upset me when I see very patronizing comments from our supporters to some of those people who are asking questions on our pages. So Brexiteers aren't dumb at all. When the whole campaigning started, you should know that they were much better versed on how the EU works and all of its sins than were the Remain crowd. And you could see that with the politicians on TV as well. Nigel Farage and Daniel Hannan, they had scripts. They'd been working at this for years. Those politicians that were for remaining in the EU had very little to back it up. There was just this laziness, this happiness with the status quo, and I think the wider population, sniffed that out, that there wasn't fire there and there wasn't conviction, and so there wasn't the wealth of information on the Remain side that there was on the Leave side at that stage. I think there's a lot more now, so you can have more intelligent arguments now, but Brexiteers aren't dumb. Okay, sure, you've got your bigots and your xenophobes that would come on the page and say utterly stupid things, but we should be very clear that there's lots of important philosophical debate that could have been had and that still can be had and that will always be able to be had, and that should be approached maturely and respectfully. Similarly with Remainers and scientists, we're not bought out, and we're not stupid and naive and elitists either. None of that. I mean, most UK scientists believe the EU is a major benefit to science, even though most UK scientists aren't employed by the EU in any way, shape or form. That doesn't matter a jot. It's about whether the system works. And the science community have seen the system work in terms of shared infrastructure and flows of people and investment even to innovation as well as basic science, and the importance of shared regulations. So now that we voted for Brexit, are companies diving into this country to take advantage of lighter regulations? No, they're not. They're petitioning the government to keep the same regulations as with the EU. With the EU, that should tell you a lot. So so Brexiteers weren't stupid, and neither are Remainers, and they're not bought out and they're not sold out, and that's something I resented hugely at the beginning when Daniel Hannan did his sock puppets video saying UK universities were sock puppets, or UK scientists and charities were sock puppets, merely because we've had a sniff of money and experience with the EU, therefore somehow we are bought out. Well, no, if we'd had experience of it and the experience was bad, as it had been, probably a decade ago, there would be a lot more that would have said, actually, let's root this money nationally. But we're not saying that because the experiences that it provides added value. So anyway, that was just a free flow rant and ramble, but I really do think that the only way forward now is for all of us to just diffuse it a lot. Don't read the media that's from your side. Don't read the media that's from the other side. Take a couple of days out or something, and just think about what are all of your opinions and why. Who do you connect with and why? Who do you think you don't connect with and why? And just take that soul time, because I know that I need it at this stage, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of other people feel that they need it too. So have a lovely weekend.